Linear functions are functions that have a constant rate of change, in other words, a constant slope. So a couple equations we're familiar with, y equals mx plus b, or we can use the function notation and say f of x is equal to mx plus b. So the m here is that constant rate of change or slope, and the b is going to be related to our y-intercept. If we're looking at a table form, we can determine if it represents a linear function or linear relationship by looking to see if there is a constant rate of change. So on the x's, each of these goes up by 1, and on the y's, they each go down by 2. So there is a consistent rate of change. The slope in this case would be a -2. It's decreasing. I can also look at it in a graphical form. In this particular case, I have a line graph, this red line, and I see that it starts here at 0, -3. And I notice that it goes through the point to -2. So I calculate what's the rate of change. I go up 1 and over 2. Okay, then it also goes through 4, -1. So again, it's up 1, hop over 2, and we land. Up 1, over 2, and we land. There's a consistent amount of change or consistent slope, and so I get a line in those cases. Knowing that can help me come up with the equations for lines, right? So this fixed number is my b in the formula, the y-intercept, and the m is telling me what that rate of change is. All right, so here if I got two lines graphed, I should be able to look at that, and if I can identify the y-intercept and one other point, I should be able to determine the slope and the equation of the line. So in this case, the y-intercept is where it's crossing the y-axis, 0, 1. And then I notice here's another nice point that it goes through. It's very easy to tell. It's not halfway in the grid. It is a nice point, and that would be the point 3, 3. So I calculate from the y-intercept how much up and how much over. And the rise over the run is my slope of 2/3. The y-intercept, that coordinate for the y is going to be my b, so my equation is going to be f of x equals 2/3 x plus 1. On this one, I would expect to get a slightly different kind of equation because my line goes down instead of up. So again, I note the y-intercept, it is 0, 3, so that's going to be my b coordinate. And then I say, okay, I have to go down and then over to get to a nice point. So when I get my change vertically, I represent it with a -2 because it's down and over 1. So in this case, my slope would be down 2 over 1 or -2, and the equation for my function would be f of x equals -2x plus 3. All right, so in general, f of x or y, doesn't matter, we use them interchangeably in this class, is equal to mx plus b. That is going to be the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. It's always going to be a line. M again is the slope, and that b is the y-coordinate. So if we're given some information, we're not given the picture, we should maybe be able to come up with the equation as well. If they tell me what the slope is, well, then they've told me m. If they tell me what the y-intercept is, I can identify b, and finding the equation of a line is just a matter of plugging those in. If instead they tell me what the slope is and a point that's on the line, it's a little more difficult, but we can still do it. I know this is not the y-intercept because the x-coordinate is not 0, but it is a point that's on my line. So in this case, we would know that y is equal to the -2/3 times x plus b. That's our general form. We know an x is -3 means y is going to be a 6. So we work out the equation and we find that b is equal to 4. Plugging that all in together, we come up with our final equation, y equals -2/3 x plus 4. Now, I'm not real crazy about like plugging in stuff and solving and then plugging back in, so I want to tell you about another type of equation that's helpful to know. It's called the point-slope equation. So this is a form that will help me figure out the equation of a line given any point and the slope. Okay, so if I know any point x1, y1 that's on my line, the equation for the line is y in general minus my y1 equals m times x in general minus my x1, my given point. So here's an example of how we would use that. If I have 2 points that I'm given that are on my line, and I want to come up with the equation, I would first have to calculate the slope. And we've done that several times. It's the difference in the y's, the rise, over the difference in the x's, the run. In this particular problem, we come up with 7. So now I'm going to plug this value of 7 in for the m in my point-slope equation, and I'm going to choose one or the other of my points. Does not matter which one you choose. I just stick with numbers that are positive when I can. So I chose the first point. So it's y minus the y value equals m, 7 we just calculated, times the x minus the x value for that same point. And then you just use a little bit of algebra and you simplify the equation into y equals mx plus b form. Now, if you're taking a quiz or doing an assignment, I would highly suggest that you plug this into your calculator and graph it and make sure that these 2 points are actually on your line. Let's take a look at one more. So in this case, we're given some function notation information. We're told that f of 5 is equal to 20 and f of 10 is equal to 45, and we're supposed to find the line from that. What we have to keep in mind is how that function notation works. Remember, those things that are inside the parentheses, those represent x values, and what it's equal to is the y value. So in other words, the point 5, 20 and the point 10, 45 are on my line. Once I realize that, I'm just doing something very similar to what we just did. I'm going to calculate the slope and use my point slope formula. So we're going to take the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. In this case, the slope is going to be 5. Now that I know the slope, I'm going to use my point slope form. And one of my points doesn't matter which one. Remember, this is x 5 and y is 20. So I used that point, I did the algebra, and I simplified and came up with f of x is equal to 5x minus 5. Let me know if you have any questions.